This is Cambridge. Built alongside and at times bridging the River Cam, this rather historic city is home to historic buildings, lots and lots of bikes, Oliver Cromwell's head somewhere, and also 31 colleges, with the university they collectively make up dating back to 1209. This is before Machu Picchu or Marco Polo or the Forbidden City, so yeah, that's pretty old. As a consequence to the whole ever-present colleges thing, there has always been a pretty large student population in Cambridge. And as a consequence to that, there have been quite a few stories of the odd prank being pulled in the city's history. I mean, what else do you expect students to do with no internet and too much free time? From winching a car onto a Senate House roof one day in 1958, where it was stuck for a week afterwards, to suspending a car under a bridge, and then again 5 years later, to putting Father Christmas hats on the spires of King's College Chapel, somehow. And then once the university built scaffolding up there to try and remove them, relocating the hats over to another spire. But the story of possibly one of the greatest starts at the turn of the century. The turn of last century, and with a student called William Horace de Vere Cole. Horace is one of those people that are absolutely fascinating, and whose lives are so full of adventure it's a surprise they aren't films yet, even to the point where it's pretty hard to try and encapsulate who they are in just a few paragraphs. I'm going to try anyway though. Horace was somewhat of a prankster, having pulled many pranks at this time and continuing to do so throughout his medium-length life. And in his pranks, he liked to target people or institutions that he deemed full of themselves, or ones that liked to take themselves quite seriously. There certainly wasn't a shortage of those in Edwardian England. Or, if for some reason he didn't fancy that, he just went after his friends instead. I guess that was also an option. Either way, with these pranks he made quite a name for himself, to the point where the then Home Secretary of the entire country pointed out that Horace did seem a very dangerous man to his friends. And that Home Secretary ended up winning a world war, so it must be true. Apparently, he arranged for several bald men to sit in a row in a theatre, each with a letter on their heads, just so he could ruin a pretentious play by spelling swear words at the upper gallery. From what I can tell, he also maybe once hosted a party where every guest, bar him of course, had bottom in their surname, and then let the guests figure that out in their own time. And at one point, he pranked a wonderfully named Member of Parliament with this name by challenging him to a race, giving the MP a 10-yard head start, and after Horace slid a watch into the MP's pocket, accused him of stealing and running away with his watch, and subsequently got the MP arrested. Okay, maybe that last one is pushing the boundaries of a prank, but luckily for him, he was also born into high society, that I have no doubt aided him in getting away with many of these pranks. He was born as the heir to a great fortune earned by his father in the American quinine trade. His uncle was at one point Governor of the Bank of England, and his sister ended up marrying future Prime Minister Neville Chamberlain. However, at the time we're concerned with, 1905, Horace was an undergraduate at Trinity College in the University of Cambridge, an incredibly prestigious college and possibly the best university in the country and maybe even the world, and had spent that time with his friend and schoolmate Adrian Stephen, basically just pranking people. However, the two wanted to pull something big off, not just digging a ditch in the middle of a busy street kind of scale, which he had actually done, but bigger than that. At some time in late February 1905, Adrian and Horace were in their accommodation somewhere here in Trinity discussing ideas to do just that, to pull off a major prank. Adrian put forth that they should try and pose as commanders of a German platoon and trick the soldiers in it to follow them over the border into France to cause chaos and confusion. Yeah, what could go wrong? Side note, I'm doing the whole exaggerated for comedic effect thing, but at this time Europe was actually busy fracturing into two alliances, each of which distrusted the other, and the whole situation was actually pretty fragile. Spoilers for the 20th century, it ends in this. So feigning an attack on one side, apparently perpetrated by the other, isn't a great thing for anyone, really. But luckily for Adrian, Horace, and the rest of Europe, his friend had a better idea. You see, highly publicised at the time in all the newspapers was the Sultan of Zanzibar, Sultan Ali bin Hamud, who was making a state visit all the way from his now non-existent country in East Africa to the UK while they were studying at Cambridge. Horace's bright idea was to pose as the Sultan on a fake visit to Cambridge, and fool people in the process. Horace's idea had a few advantages over Adrian's. Adrian's Stephen liked it for its practicality, as it could be executed in just a few days and was substantially cheaper. I mean, they were students. Horace also liked it, mainly because he was the one who came up with it. Thus, the Zanzibar Hoax was born, and almost immediately upon thinking it up, they set about putting it into action. Adrian and Horace, realizing that for a sultan, a party of one other person would be a little underwhelming, quickly started recruiting friends to help out, namely Leyland Buxton, Robert Bowen Coldhurst, and Drummer Howard. That was not even a real name. Drummer Howard, who, incidentally, I'll be calling Howard from now on because no, was from Oxford, a rival university, and from what I can tell, Horace only really got him involved to play the European translator, who wouldn't be as heavily disguised as the others, so more liable to being recognised if he were, say, a Cambridge undergrad. They also narrowed the plan slightly, planning just to trick the mayor and related officials instead of people at the actual university itself, as not only is there a lower chance of being recognised by the people he might know, especially for 6'5" Adrian, who wasn't exactly inconspicuous, but also a lesser chance of therefore getting expelled if they got into trouble, which was always a possibility. Hint, hint. Meanwhile, during the planning process, the Sultan's photo had prominently been shown in the newspapers, which was a bit inconvenient. They were playing off the fact that nobody would actually know what he looked like, so they could impersonate a generic African king and pass it off as him. So this kind of fell apart now that everyone did know what he actually looked like. So they quickly switched to impersonating a pretend uncle of the Sultan called Musaka Ali, and not the actual Sultan himself. Yeah, most reports on the hoax get that bit wrong. Shows you can't trust everything you hear on the internet. Apart from this though, right guys? You can trust me. In order to look the part, they travelled to London to a professional costumist in order to get Adrian, Bowen, Horace, and Leyland to look the part.
Howard
didn't need one, he was to play the interpreter. While they were there, it was also time for step 3. On the 2nd of March 1905, while the group was still getting their costumes done in London, a telegram was sent off posing as a government official called Henry Lucas, warning the mayor of the impending state visit, and it read that Prince Ali will arrive today at Cambridge 427 for short visit. Could you arrange to show him buildings of interest and send carriage? Henry Lucas, Hotel Cecil, London. The name Lucas was used because one of them thought it sounded official or something. Yeah, no, that's literally it. This plan's foolproof. Almost immediately upon sending the telegram, they boarded a train from Liverpool Street to Cambridge to arrive at 427 ready to be received by the mayor, then a man called Algernon S. Campkin. That's just silly. And remember, this whole thing is happening just a few days after Horace even came up with it. It seems pretty risky, pranking the mayor of the town in which you are studying in such an embarrassing way, and especially in such a seemingly rushed manner. But it actually worked really well. They were greeted at the train station, shown a local market with Horace buying lots of things to keep up the illusion he was really rich, then briefly attended a meeting with the mayor at the city's Guildhall, which has since been replaced by this version, and even toured some of the colleges of the city, before being returned amidst an impromptu crowd of well-wishers to the train station, to take a train back to London. At this point, they were to complete step 9. Because turns out the one thing that they had forgotten to consider was how they were going to get out of the act. Whoops. They didn't want to board the train because they mostly all lived in Cambridge, so didn't want to have to depart only to have to return again. But they couldn't just not board the train. It was arranged, and not doing so would be weird enough to start causing a fuss. So what could they do? Well, they ran away. They just legged it, basically. At the last possible second, they sprinted off the platform away from the waiting train carriage and to the nearest taxi, which they then ordered to drive as fast as it could out of the train station and to the countryside, where they all sought refuge at a friend's house, had a bath and a nice meal, and soon after snuck their way back to their dorms. It had worked. They had done it. Though, inevitably, I suppose, people had been alerted to the fact something was up by that getaway. And also, so had the press. The next day, the Daily Mail, which still exists as a newspaper today, and actually quite a similar one, wrote the story with the full account of the mysterious East African royals that, after making a state visit, suddenly started speaking common English and sprinting off into a taxi never to be seen again. Yeah, that and some 30 other papers that followed in the Mail's wake had an absolute field day. And by this point, all of them had pretty much cottoned on that this was a fake, perpetrated by someone. And who had done it they didn't quite know. but whoever it was, they had made the mayor look particularly silly. The majority of the group of hoaxers, and by majority I mean everyone but Horace, was in agreement that they shouldn't go to the papers with their account of the events that they had perpetrated, because, as Adrian Stephen put it, we had had our fun, and it seemed a little like gloating over our victims. However, whatever the rest of us thought, Cole said he was determined to go to London and see what he could do to get publicity, and I decided to go with him to see that, at any rate, what got published was the truth. Yeah, Horace got his story published as a follow-up in the same national newspaper that had broken it in the first place. The interview was published as anonymous, but in the next few days, through that I'm not sure, but through some means, the Cambridge authorities, and by extension the mayor, had figured out who specifically had done all this. Algernon Campkin's initial reaction was to try and have the participants, quote, sent down, which means to basically be suspended or expelled from the university. However, this may not have been a great choice for the mayor. From what I can tell, people in general weren't actually that mortified by the innocent pranks of some college undergraduates, and if anything, just saw it as a bit of fun, and this is partly to do with how the position of mayor and how Edwardian class structure worked. You'd think that, to be in this position, you would need to be someone rich, or upper class, or generally posh. Well, from what I can tell, that's not really how this mayorship works. Every year since 1207, the Cambridge City Council, made up of common people of the city, nominate one of their own to the position. This means that, since the mayor is always a councillor beforehand, most mayors, especially at this period, were common people, like grocers, physicians, ladies' outfitters, etc., etc., or in Campkin's case, a pharmacist. If you own and tend to a shop like that, you're not really thought of as high class, or someone you should respect as much as otherwise, so innocently poking fun at him wasn't as bad a taboo, as though you are disrespecting the mayor, you're not really breaking class boundaries, and that made it okay. Yeah, Edwardian England was weird. Totally hypothetically, of course, if you were to poke fun at something more high class or well respected, like a national or royal institution, and do it in the same way, the reception to that by the public would be very different, hint hint plug plug. For someone not of especially high standing to respond to a relatively innocent joke through expulsion, that would just make his reputation way worse, of that guy that can't take a joke that everyone else can, and would undoubtedly make the papers yet again. The Vice-Chancellor, basically the head of Cambridge University at the time, Edward Beck, must have realised this, because when the mayor asked them to be sent down, Beck advised the mayor, quote, for the sake of his own reputation, to think it over. Though, if he insisted, he would oblige in sending them down. Campkin eventually backed down, and nothing happened, which actually might seem a little weird for such a big stunt. I mean, they got away with it. But look at it like this. Horace almost got expelled from his college. At least, even though no direct action was taken, it would in future discourage him from doing something similar. So, he wasn't going to do that one again. Sorry. I think I've read that wrong. Sorry, let me just try that again. Right, take two. Horace almost got expelled from his college. At least, though no direct action was taken, it would in future discourage him from doing something similar. So, he did it again. Wait, what? No, that's gotta be... Oh, you've got to be kidding me.